Let me ask you something. When was the last time someone spoke to you, honestly and without judgment, about your body and about pleasure? I'm not talking about the kind of loud, flashy health advice you see on daytime TV or in email spam. I mean a quiet, real conversation, man to man, doctor to patient, heart to heart. You see, most of the men I talk to, men in their 50s, 60s, 70s, have lived entire lives with a certain kind of silence, especially when it comes to things like intimacy, self-touch, and what those things mean for their health. They've carried questions, maybe even guilt, in their back pockets for decades, and they've learned to carry them without making a sound. But what if I told you that some of those worries, some of that shame, were never yours to carry, that they came from a time and a culture that didn't understand the body as well as we do now? What if the very thing you were warned to avoid might actually be helping you more than hurting? A few months ago, a patient of mine, we'll call him George, walked into my office. 68 years old, retired firefighter, still walked his dog every morning before the sun rose, but something in his posture told me he was carrying more than just age. After the exam, when the conversation drifted toward the prostate, he hesitated, looked down, shifted in his seat. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he asked, "Doc, is it bad that I still, do it sometimes? I mean, at my age?" It took me a moment to realize he was talking about masturbation, and not in the joking way we sometimes hear from younger men, but with real concern, as if he was confessing something shameful, something dark. George had been reading articles online, some saying it was healthy, others warning that it could harm his prostate or ruin his testosterone levels or somehow weaken him. And so, like many men do, he came to me hoping for clarity, but bracing himself for condemnation. I looked at him the same way I'm hoping you feel looked at right now, with understanding. No judgment, just care, because George isn't alone. In fact, he's part of a silent majority of older men who have never had a real conversation about how their most private habits might affect their most essential health. So let's have that conversation now. To understand how all this fits together, we need to start with a small organ that gets very little attention until something goes wrong. The prostate. Tucked just below the bladder and wrapped around the urethra like a little donut. The prostate is often described as the size of a walnut, but I like to think of it more like a silent engine. Small, yes, but essential. It helps produce the fluid that carries sperm. It plays a role in controlling urine flow, and it's deeply affected by the hormonal tides of aging, especially testosterone and dihydrotestosterone. But like all engines, it needs maintenance. And this is where the conversation starts to turn. You've probably heard of the common prostate concerns: benign prostatic hyperplasia, or BPH, which makes urinating more difficult over time; prostatitis, which is inflammation of the gland that can cause pain or burning; and of course, the word no man wants to hear, cancer. But here's the part they don't always tell you. The prostate is responsive. It reacts to how it's used, not just in terms of aging or diet, but in terms of stimulation, of release. And this is where masturbation, or more broadly, ejaculation, comes into the picture. Let me be clear. This isn't about titillation. This is about biology. Recent studies, reliable ones, not tabloid junk, have found something surprising. Men who ejaculated more frequently in midlife and later years had a lower risk of developing prostate cancer. One large-scale study even suggested that 21 times a month, whether through sex or masturbation, was associated with the greatest protective effect, not because of some magic number, but because of a physiological mechanism. The prostate, when regularly cleared, seems to maintain healthier tissue function. Inflammation goes down. Old seminal fluid doesn't build up. Cellular debris is flushed out more consistently. It's a bit like regularly turning on the pipes in a vacation home. Let them sit too long without flow, and sediment starts to build. Valves rust, function diminishes, but let the water run, even just occasionally, and everything stays a little smoother. That said, frequency is not the whole story. It's not about hitting a target number on a calendar. What matters more is understanding your body's signals and your relationship to them. Because the truth is, masturbation, like any intimate act, can be either nourishing or numbing, depending on the intent behind it. Let's go back to George for a moment. What he really wanted to know wasn't whether the act itself was harmful. He wanted to know if it meant something was wrong with him, that at his age, he should have outgrown the need for it, that it was somehow a sign of weakness. And this is where we reach the deeper part of the conversation, the part most medical pamphlets never touch. We grow up in cultures that separate sexuality and health, that frame pleasure as something for the young and shame as something for the old. Somewhere along the way, especially for men, the body becomes a battlefield of mixed messages. Be strong, but not emotional. Stay virile, but don't talk about desire. Age with grace, but don't admit what you miss. I can't tell you how many men I've seen who live with silent guilt, not because they've done anything wrong, but because no one ever told them it was okay to still feel, still want, still enjoy, even in solitude, even in their 70s. And so, they push it down, or they hide it, or they go looking for answers in places that offer judgment, not clarity. The truth is, there is nothing inherently harmful about masturbation at any age when it's done in balance, when it's not compulsive, when it's not used as a substitute for connection or a way to avoid deeper emotional wounds. And yes, when the body is still healthy and the act doesn't cause discomfort or pain. In fact, it can be a form of self-care, a way to stay in touch, literally and emotionally, with a part of the body that often fades from view in later years. It helps maintain pelvic muscle tone, it supports blood flow, it keeps the neural circuits of arousal intact, which, by the way, can help preserve erectile function even when partnered intimacy becomes less frequent. But more than that, it can serve as a reminder that you are still alive, still whole, still human. There's no shame in that. In a world that often tries to reduce men to numbers, cholesterol, PSA levels, blood pressure, there is something profoundly human about simply reconnecting with your own sensations. And in that space, the body begins to heal, not just physiologically, but emotionally. The key, as always, is balance. That's where we'll continue in a moment. How to find that balance, how to listen for the signals your prostate and your mind are quietly sending, and what practical steps you can take to support this small but mighty gland for the years ahead. But for now, I want you to sit with one idea. Your body, even now, is not something to apologize for. It is something to understand. And in understanding it, you may just rediscover something you thought was lost. Finding that balance begins with listening deeply to your own body, a skill that becomes more vital as we age. It's easy to get caught up in how often should I, or is this normal? But really, what matters most is how you feel afterward. Do you feel refreshed, calm, connected to yourself? Or do you feel drained, restless, or even ashamed? Those sensations, subtle as they may be, are the body's way of guiding you, not just in terms of physical health, but emotional well-being as well. If your experience of masturbation leaves you feeling more energized, with less tension and better sleep, it's a sign that this simple act might be serving your prostate and your nervous system well. If, on the other hand, it becomes a habit driven by anxiety or loneliness, a compulsive escape rather than a moment of self-care, then it's worth pausing and reflecting. This is not to shame you, but to encourage you to be honest with yourself, because emotional patterns influence physical health more than most realize. Equally important is the awareness of your prostate's health signals. Many men overlook early signs of trouble because they seem minor or embarrassing. But symptoms like a weak urine stream, difficulty starting or stopping urination, waking multiple times at night to urinate, or any pain in the pelvic area deserve attention. These are your body's gentle alarms. Ignoring them doesn't make them disappear. It allows small problems to become larger ones. The good news is that regular checkups and screenings, especially after age 55, can catch issues early when they are most manageable. A conversation with your doctor about your habits, concerns, and symptoms can feel vulnerable, but it's also a powerful step toward reclaiming your health and peace of mind. Remember, your healthcare provider is your partner, not your judge. Another often overlooked support for the prostate and overall pelvic health is pelvic floor exercise. You might have heard these exercises called Kegels, but in men, they are much more than that. They help strengthen the muscles that control urination and sexual function, improve blood flow, and can even ease discomfort related to prostatitis or BPH. Incorporating gentle, guided exercises into your routine a few times a week can yield noticeable improvements, not overnight, but steadily, like tending a garden through the seasons. While all this sounds very practical and medical, it's also deeply personal. There is dignity in the way a man listens to his body and responds with care. It is not a sign of weakness to admit you need help or to change habits. On the contrary, it's an act of strength and wisdom. Let me share something important. You are not broken. You are not a problem to be fixed. You are a living, breathing story shaped by decades of experiences, joys, disappointments, and discoveries. Your body, your prostate included, is part of that story. And just like a well-tended garden can bloom vibrantly even in autumn, your body can flourish in its own time with the right care and attention. This quiet revolution in men's health is about reclaiming that flourishing. It's about restoring power and dignity where shame and silence once reigned. It's about understanding that vitality isn't about chasing youth or unrealistic ideals. It's about embracing the present moment and making choices that honor your body and your spirit. So if you find yourself hesitating, wondering if it's too late to change, or if the habits you've carried for years are normal, remember this: the body is resilient. It listens, it responds, it heals when given the chance, and you have the ability to guide it toward health with kindness, patience, and knowledge. As I reflect on my conversations with George, I think about the relief that washed over him when he finally understood that his experiences were not unusual and certainly not shameful, that he could embrace his own rhythm, listen to his body's signals, and still find joy in his solitude and intimacy, that his prostate, this small but mighty gland, was not an enemy, but a partner in his ongoing journey. If I could sit with you in that same room, I'd tell you this: your body is not something to fear or fight. It is something to understand. With time, it may speak more softly than before, but it still speaks, and it deserves your attention and your kindness. There is a quiet power in accepting your body's changes, in finding balance between care and pleasure, and in opening yourself to honest, shame-free conversations about what it means to be a man in your 50s, 60s, and beyond. This is not a path of denial or despair. It's a path of renewal and hope. If this video has resonated with you, or if you know another man who might carry some of the same worries or questions, please consider sharing it. Let's break the silence together, one conversation at a time. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel for more thoughtful, compassionate health guidance, because your journey toward vitality and well-being deserves respect and support every step of the way. Remember, the way you care for yourself today echoes far into tomorrow, so be gentle with yourself, listen closely, and know that even in silence, your body is speaking, and it's waiting for you to hear.